What's up, guys? It is Brian. I got a cool little video here for you, some tips, tricks, stuff like that to hopefully prolong your guys' bikes in some of the ways I've prolonged mine. Some of the ways I found that worked, maybe haven't worked, whatever. My bike actually just hit 51,000 miles as of like 3 days ago. It's like 51 and some change now. So that's a pretty big milestone for a lot of sport bikes. Nevertheless, a stunt bike. Stunt bikes, I very rarely see in that kind of range, especially when the motors have been stunted their whole lives. I'd consider a stunt bike to have a lot harder of a life as far as motors go and as far as all your parts go. And that is the original engine. With some of the original parts on it, a lot of the other parts have been replaced. However, that is the original motor. So I want to give you guys some tips and tricks on what you can do to hopefully make your bike survive accidents, fires, hits, whatever, for 50,000 more miles. So let's get into this video. I got some cool tips and tricks for you. For the first step, and before I start riding here, something I wanted to cover, and it mixes in with the water here. When your engine is cold, metal, tends to wear a lot differently. I've read a lot of articles and a lot of different studies that say that motor wear in general takes place mostly when your motor is cool. So what does that mean? That means that you should always let your motor warm up. If you watch some of these MotoGP guys, if you watch racers, whatever, and if you have like a built motor, you're gonna know from your builder, if they're professional, they're gonna tell you let your engine warm up, let everything warm up in the spec, because you want your motor within its operating temperature before you start beating on it. So here in Chicago, we'll have some cold days and we'll still ride. I've ridden in 30, 20, 10 degree weather on this bike, and I definitely did not just pull it right out of the garage and start going. You know what I mean? Like that would be pretty stupid of me. However, you don't want your bike to run too hot either, and that's something I'll cover later. But first and foremost, you don't want your bike taking off, hitting a rev limiter when it doesn't even read a temp yet. I think that should be pretty obvious, but I've definitely noticed guys that do it. Just jump right on their bike after it's been sitting forever and get right to it and pop up a wheelie right away and start starving the motor for oil when it hasn't even run yet. So, in themes with the water here, warm up your bike for the love of God. That's my first tip for you. Alright guys, so now we're off riding. Here's my second tip for you. Huge, really important thing, especially on these 636s that I've noticed, and that is keeping them cool. A lot of these guys that you see motors blow on stunt rides, the motor is up way into the 200s. I mean 220s, 230s, blinking on 240 for a long time, and all of a sudden it pops. Your motor's yelling at you, screaming at the top of its lungs, please cool down, please stop. That's your job, to listen to that motor. If you want your motor to last long, there's guys that take pride in how many motors they've blown. I'm not one of them. Maybe I will be one day, but for now, I take pride in that I've only had one motor and I take care of it. So what are some of the steps that you might take to keeping your bike a little bit cooler? Well, that's a big list, and I've actually made a video on it already, so you can check it out, but I'll go over it really quick with you. Your radiator fins should be in good contact, like they should all be straight. There shouldn't be too many bent ones, although we all know that there's going to be bent ones. You can have two fans on it. You can have your one fan hardwired. You can have both fans hardwired if you put an aftermarket one on it. I run engine ice, which is a higher boiling point coolant, and I also run water wetter, which helps the coolant stay colder because it acts like a lubricant for your coolant to glide across the metal parts easier, whatever. It's really scientific, water wetter, but I do stand behind both of those, engine ice and water wetter. And also making sure that your coolant system is properly burped, is properly functioning, is huge as well. So having a good radiator cap that holds a good seal, super important. I've had a radiator cap go bad on me before, and I noticed it instantly because my bike was leaking just a little bit of coolant, but especially running hotter because it had an air pocket in the coolant. So these are all stuff that you can do to your bike to help it run a little bit cooler. I'm here city riding right now with a high idle, and it's at 179, and it's a pretty warm day out. So if you can do that, that's fine. If you can keep your bike below, the 210, 220, all that's great. Every bike has a different operating temperature. However, that's where I try to be in. I try to keep it as cool as possible. A little bit of wheelie action for you, huh? A little foot brake work this morning. Bit of hand brake to cool her off. There you go. Oh no, I hope everything's okay. Elementary school's like evacuated right now. There's police and stuff out front. I'm sure it's okay. busy school. Alright guys, so there you go, number 2, keeping your bike cold. And I don't want to take away from how important that is when I say this, but number 3 may be the most important. Now, if my dad did teach me anything, it was that you can never change the oil too much. Yeah, you can change it too much, but come on. I change my oil at least once a month, and sometimes there's times like if I had a major event, like I'm going to hit ROC and Doomsday this month, I'll probably do an oil change in between. I might not do an oil filter change, but I will do an oil change. I believe that circulating your motor with fluid all the time, good fluid, is super important. Now, what oil do I run? There's a question I get all the time. I run Rotella 5W30 T6. Yeah, it's a diesel oil. Yeah, I believe in it wholeheartedly. I've been running it ever since I've been riding, whether that's on my GSXRs or now my stunt bikes, whatever. That's what I run with the Lucas oil stabilizer or additive or whatever. I actually have a video on what the oil I run, as well as the coolant, so you guys can check out both those videos there. Both been up for quite a long time. I've been running that oil for as long as I can remember. So that is, I think, truly is probably one of the main reasons that my bike, okay, thank you, my bike has lasted so long, is because I just constantly keep fresh oil in it, and that's huge, just constantly filtering it out. Oh, Katana, what's this?
Hey, showing how we in the last days, the Lord about to return.
Yeah?
Yeah, we in the last days. You got it 28. Can I ride with y'all?
Yeah!
And
what up, Bob? How you hanging, baby?
When can I meet up with y'all, bro? Ain't no events coming up, bro? Can I get a picture with you?
Yeah, get in here.
Wait, hold on.
Get in here, get in here.
Get in here, man, dog. That's artificial intelligence, bro.
I'll be there.
Anton's there. All right, I'll see you. I will. Never know who you're gonna run out to out in the streets. Good old OG Bob. Now I'm sure you're wondering why my bike is on fire in this cover photo again, because I made a video a couple of years ago where my bike caught on fire down in Kentucky. Now, why does it catch on fire, and why would your bike possibly catch on fire? The first time I was doing a rolling burnout, and my lower fairing had some gasoline overfill or something like that, soaking in the bottom of the fairings. So my fairings were essentially kind of soaked in gasoline. So it was already not a good situation. However, I had a steel wired rear tire. So as I started, doing a rolling burnout, it's creating sparks on the ground, and my lower fairings filled with gasoline. So my lower fairing caught on fire, and that was like crazy. And once again, this is the third time in this video I'm referring to another video on my channel, so I guess I'll just link that up there as well as the others. Check out my bike catching on fire in Kentucky. Now, this most recent time, my bike was engulfed in flames. That has to do with an oil filter popping. The oil ring on the inside the oil filter has popped out on the more recent K&Ns on some of these aftermarket oil filters. So you need to only run OEM. I'm stupid for not running only OEM, but I've learned my lesson. I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna return to using the safety on it. So make sure you buy OEM. K&N's cheaping out. I know a lot of racetracks that won't even allow K&N oil filters on the track anymore. So that's a thing. Now guys, the last thing I can say to preserve your bike, and this is huge as well. These are all big. I'm not going to take away from any of them. Whatever. The last thing I can tell you, when something is broken, or you think is broken, or might be on its way out, replace it right away. Don't wait till it goes on to something else. Don't wait till, that little tick turns into a blown head. Like, you check your valves right away, or, check your timing. Just check your stuff, you know what I mean? And if it needs to be replaced, then replace it, It's as simple as that. It's definitely not something to overthink, but I understand that when money's tight and you need to keep riding, you'll do anything. I understand that. But even more so, you need to prioritize your engine's life over everything. Do it right here? Do it right here? Alright. 12 o'clock, right there. like that. So guys, I know you all want to keep your engines living long, living good, just so you can keep having more experiences like that. So here's to 50,000 more miles of me and this 636 motor, hopefully, and a lot of coasters along the way. This is Brian 636, signing